Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome to The World Over Live. We've got a terrific show for you this week. Thanks for joining us. On Wednesday night in the United States, we saw the first of 3 presidential debates. Which candidate came out on top? Former Speaker of the House and presidential candidate Newt Gingrich is here to give us his take. And later, communicating history to children is always a challenge. Callista Gingrich will join us to talk about her latest children's book, Land of the Pilgrim's Pride, the continuing adventures of Ellis the Elephant. It touches America's legacy of freedom, including the freedom of religion. And finally, for you perplexed Catholic voters out there, Father John TRIGILIO, president of the Confraternity of Catholic Clergy, is here to preview a Catholic voter's guide. It's an app for iPhone, iPad, and Android, and we'll discuss the year of faith. Now, I want you to be part of the program, so get your emails in now, theworldover@EWTN.com. Let's get things started. Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. While the presidential candidates drew the national spotlight, both vice presidential candidates spent part of their week campaigning in Iowa. Voting has already begun in that state as well as in Ohio. Joseph Biden was in Council Bluffs on Thursday, touting the president's plan to restore middle-class economic security. And on Monday, Paul Ryan spoke to an overflow crowd at Loras College, a Catholic liberal arts school in Dubuque. Ryan hit the major campaign themes and then spoke directly to the issue of religious freedom.
When you see a government that presumes that it can dictate to us how we exercise our rights, how we exercise our First Amendment rights, which, by the way, is our first freedom, religious liberty, freedom of conscience, that is our right as people, and our government has no right taking that away from us.
Biden and Ryan will square off in their only debate this coming week in Danville, Kentucky. We'll have more on the presidential debate in our next segment. And 2 lawsuits fighting the federal contraception ban were in the news this week. A federal judge in Missouri has dismissed one of dozens of religious freedom lawsuits against the Health and Human Services regulation. Judge Carol Jackson ruled that a Catholic business owner's indirect financial support of sterilization and contraception does not constitute a substantial burden on a plaintiff's religious exercise. Lawyers have promised an appeal. Meanwhile, a major Bible publisher is the latest entity to sue over the HHS mandate. Tyndale House Publishers filed a complaint Tuesday in the D.C. District Court after it was denied a religious exemption from the federal rule. The complaint argues that the federal government has, quote, deemed devout publishers of the Bible to be insufficiently religious to enjoy religious freedom in America. Matt Bowman, attorney for the Alliance Defending Freedom, added, to say that a Bible publisher is not religious is patently absurd and is a prime example of how ridiculous and arbitrary the Obama administration's mandate is. The federal government's bureaucrats are not qualified to decide what faith is, who the faithful are, and where and how that faith may be lived out. And the U.S. Supreme Court this week opened its new term. Awaiting the justices are several potential landmark cases. The High Court is expected to hear cases related to affirmative action, voting rights, abortion, the Defense of Marriage Act, and other state-level marriage laws. More horrific killings are being attributed to the jihadist group Boko Haram. On Monday, close to 40 Christian students were executed at a university dormitory in Nigeria. According to the reports, masked gunmen went door to door at the Federal Polytechnic College in Mubi. The gunmen called out the names of Christian students one by one. They were summarily shot or slain. Police have since arrested more than 100 suspects in the shooting, many of them fellow university students. And in Nairobi, Kenya, a cowardly grenade attack during Sunday school at a Catholic church has killed a 9-year-old boy. 6 other children were in critical condition at a nearby hospital. The Somali al-Qaeda group Al-Shabaab is suspected. And the Vatican tribunal hearing the case of Pope Benedict's once trusted butler began this week. Vatileaks suspect Paolo Gabriele was arrested in May and charged with the theft of confidential Vatican documents, including personal correspondence to and from the Pope, which subsequently appeared in the Italian press. Gabriele said he was not guilty of the formal theft charge. At the same time, he has admitted to taking the documents and betraying the Pope's trust. He claims he was attempting to protect the pontiff by exposing what he saw as corruption and manipulation in the Vatican. Police said that they found nearly 1,000 confidential documents in Gabriel's Vatican City apartment. Gabriel said he acted alone. No evidence has been offered to the contrary. The tribunal will reconvene in the coming days to hear closing arguments and decide the case. Gabriel faces up to 4 years in prison if convicted. Amid doubts about its authenticity, the Smithsonian Channel this week postponed its airing of a documentary on a papyrus fragment that purports to show Jesus referring to his wife. The much ballyhooed scrap of papyrus, dubbed by a Harvard professor as the Gospel of Jesus' wife, is said to be of early Coptic Christian origin. It contains a dialogue in which Jesus refers to, quote, my wife. He also says she can be his disciple. So the Smithsonian Channel promoted the fragment as one of the most significant discoveries of all time. But after scholars and antiquities experts began to challenge the finding, the channel pulled its September 30th premiere. No new release date has been set. Meanwhile, the Vatican Daily, L'Osservatore Romano, weighed in, saying that evidence points toward the papyrus being, quote, an inept forgery. And Pope Benedict had an unexpected high-profile Vatican visitor during his weekly general audience. And when I say high, I mean really high. On Tuesday, a serial Italian activist broke away from a tour group atop St. Peter's Basilica and climbed out onto its dome, where he camped for the next 24 hours. The beachfront bar owner was protesting new government regulations that he said are hurting him and other mom-and-pop beach vendors. It was the second time in 3 months that the bartender has scaled St. Peter's Dome. This time, the activist was only coaxed down after Italy's tourist minister agreed to meet with concerned beach vendors. 400 feet below the Holy Father's St. Peter's Square audience, with 20,000 faithful in attendance, went on uninterrupted on Wednesday. The Pope made no mention of the dome squatter. When we return, who do you think prevailed in this week's presidential debate? And were any of you Catholic swing voters swayed? Drop me an email at worldover@ewtn.com. Newt Gingrich joins us to give us his take on the debates and more when the World Over Live continues. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Last night I thought was a great opportunity for the American people to see two very different visions for the country. I saw the president's vision as trickle-down government, and I don't think that's what America believes in.
So you see, the man on stage last night, he does not want to be held accountable for the real Mitt Romney's decisions and what he's been saying for the last year. And that's because
That was Governor Romney and President Obama giving their analysis of last night's debate. Now, millions in the U.S. and around the world watched this first presidential debate this week between the president and his challenger, Mitt Romney. To give us his expert analysis, a man who faced Mitt Romney on that debate stage, former Speaker of the House and Republican presidential candidate, Newt Gingrich.
Good to be with you.
Great to have you back. Now, let's start. A few days before this debate, you said, Mitt Romney needs to be as tough with Barack Obama as he was with me in Florida. Was he?
I think he was. I think he did a very, very good job. I was actually quoting Callista, who had made that comment to me, and I think she was right. He was firm. He was clear. He didn't back down. He was also cheerful. If you watch the footage, if you turn the sound off, Romney's happy. He's smiling. Obama looks like he's somewhere between totally bored and wanting to go home early.
Yeah.
I mean, it was truly, I think for anybody who's an Obama fan, it had to be an enormous shock just at a personal performance level.
Mm-hmm. Was this enough to change the dynamic? The dynamic being Mitt Romney's down in all the swing states. He's not likable. He's not specific enough. Did this change that narrative?
Well, it changed a lot of dynamic. The Romney supporters are now going to be energized. The Obama supporters are confused. You can see it this morning with David Axelrod, who really looked like he was almost stunned at the outcome. And so I don't think it means that Romney wins at this stage. It means that Romney's back in the game, and that a terrible debate would have really hurt Romney. A great debate, which is what he had. CNN said it's the highest approval any presidential candidate's gotten since they began taking polls about debates. So it is really a remarkable performance. That's putting him back in the game. He's in the hunt. He has a chance to win, but he's got to have another pretty good 33 days.
67% of people in that CNN poll said Romney won the night. You think that's a pretty accurate predictor?
Well, I think it tells you what they didn't say they're going to vote for him. They said he won the night. That's a higher number than Reagan got, to give you some sense of what a remarkable performance it was.
It was, and you know, when I interviewed him, my first thought coming away, and I imagine you took some of this as well, he's incredibly disciplined. I mean, this is a guy who, he's studied and he's ready for whatever he's doing. And it seems to me he has his own track he's going to get on and ride it no matter what happens. Is that your sense about what you saw?
I think people didn't notice that Mitt Romney took both Harvard Law and Harvard Business School at the same time. This is a guy who works, I'm reminded because Callista's a classical pianist by training, and that means she has to know every note, she has to study, there's no margin for error, and so she has this habit of enormous preparation. You saw with Romney last night, whereas I think Obama's been such a natural his whole life that he doesn't prepare. And he suddenly found out last night he's now in a league where if he doesn't prepare, he's just going to get beaten up pretty badly.
It's not a time to coast, certainly not now.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how they come back, because they're not going to roll over and play dead.
Right, right. Do you think opposition research, a nasty story, some dirty tricks are in the offing here?
I think the Democrats after last night and the left after last night, I mean, MSNBC was on the verge of meltdown today. There was a paroxysm of terror running through the entire channel. So I think they will throw the kitchen sink at Romney. And his job is to firmly and pleasantly just keep coming. And I think Ryan next week will do very, very well against the vice president. I think Ryan knows more facts than Joe Biden has misstated. I mean, it's an enormous achievement.
All right, let's go. I want to show some clips from this debate. The opening of this debate I found puzzling. Now, maybe some are saying that this is the president's attempt to pander to the female voters, the women vote that he needs. I want you to listen to this and give me your take.
There are a lot of points I want to make tonight, but the most important one is that 20 years ago I became the luckiest man on earth because Michelle Obama agreed to marry me. And so I just want to wish, sweetie, you happy anniversary and let you know that a year from now we will not be celebrating it in front of 40 million people.
And congratulations to you, Mr. President, on your anniversary. I'm sure this was the most romantic place you could imagine, here with me. So congratulations.
What did you make of that opening salvo and Romney getting the laugh out of the exchange?
Well, first of all, it was part of Romney's establishing that he was there on the stage as a peer, not intimidated. But second, you have to ask the question, why did they agree to last night? I mean, he's the President of the United States. He could have said to the debate commission, you know, I'm available on Tuesday, I'm available on Thursday, but I got a heavy date Wednesday night. This idea of, oh, gee, I didn't realize, I assume he knew that his anniversary. I assume the scheduling team at the campaign knew it was his anniversary. They could have said, you know, it would have been a very romantic evening, and it might have actually been politically pretty effective to have taken Michelle out to a nice, pleasant dinner, to have celebrated together. I thought as it was, it made me feel kind of awkward, like, you know.
We're sorry to be keeping you from your romantic night.
No, I mean, the way he said, if you go back and watch, the way he says it's clumsy.
Yeah.
You know,
awkward.
it didn't. It came across as almost like they'd said, "No, the first thing you say when you go out is this,"
right?
Which is very different than, in a very relaxed way, saying something. It's just, again, I mean, I'm delighted for them. I don't think they had a particularly happy time after the debate.
No,
it didn't strike me that it was that, oh, now let's go celebrate kind of moment.
Yeah.
But again, I thought Romney came back very effectively.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to another bite. This is the president charging that Mitt Romney's intention is to lower taxes for upper income earners. And the response, listen.
That's the analysis of economists who have looked at this. And that kind of top-down economics where folks at the top are doing well, so the average person making $3 million is getting a $250,000 tax break, while middle-class families are burdened further, that's not what I believe is a recipe for economic growth.
Look, I got 5 boys. I'm used to people saying something that's not always true, but just keep on repeating it and ultimately hoping I'll believe it. But that is not the case, all right? I will not reduce the taxes paid by high-income Americans.
Now, your thought on that exchange, what it did dramatically and stylistically?
Well, I mean, first of all, the 5 boys reference and sort of setting the president up as the 6th boy. Mm-hmm. And the idea that as a mature person, Romney knows when things aren't factual. It was a very elegant, it was almost like there you go again with Reagan. It's a very elegant way to say, okay, we got a guy here telling tall tales. Mm-hmm. Second, Romney clearly has evolved his position and has reached the conclusion that he will close enough loopholes on the very wealthy that they will come out at a net zero on average, but they will have much lower rates, marginal rates.
Right.
And that's, I think you'll find most of his supporters would accept that. One of the things that Obama's done is he has so enraged successful Americans that they don't need for Mitt Romney to do anything for them except beat Obama. That's the most they're going to need for at least 2 or 3 years. That'll make them so happy that they'll put up with a lot of policies.
The president continues to go at this. When he was in Denver, in Iowa, in Wisconsin earlier today, he said Mitt Romney means to raise taxes on the middle class. It's the only way that he can bring this deficit plan into being. Your thoughts?
I think that the Obama team and the left in general is off on a track that won't work. It's exactly what Carter tried to do in 1980 to Reagan. And the reason it doesn't work is if you say something that in the end isn't true, the longer you spend on it and the bigger you build it up, the greater the collapse of the balloon. And I thought last night after about the 5th or 6th time, that Romney came back and said, that's not true, that's not what I will do.
Yeah.
It just began to be sort of awkward watching the president mindlessly repeat this charge.
While we're talking about taxes, Vice President Joe Biden today in Iowa said this. I'd like your reaction.
On top of the $1 trillion of spending we've already cut, we're going to ask, yes, we're going to ask the wealthy to pay more. My heart breaks. Come on, man. You know the phrase they always use? Obama and Biden want to raise taxes by $8 trillion. Guess what? Yes, we do in one regard. We want to let that $1 trillion tax cut expire so the middle class doesn't have to bear the burden of all that money going to the super wealthy.
A wise thing to say at this point in the campaign?
First of all, coming on top of the middle class has been buried in the last 4 years, which of course is the Obama administration. And his charge that they're going to put you back in chains, said to a black audience. I don't know whether Joe Biden should be made honorary co-chair of the Romney campaign or not. But I would say that he has done as much to help Mitt Romney as any single person has. And I look forward to the debate between Paul Ryan and Joe Biden with great anticipation.
What would be your advice to Paul Ryan? Because having watched Joe Biden for a number of years, Newt, when he gets on that stump, he gets that wily thing going. He's down with the people. He's the coal miner's son. And he starts connecting with that audience in a touchy-feely way. Can Paul Ryan, the Capitol Hill wonk, meet and match that challenge?
No. I mean, why would he try to pretend that he was Neil Kinnock giving a Labor Party speech? I mean, you know,
But the fact is, Paul Ryan actually comes from this similar working class background.
My advice to Paul would be slow down, be cheerful. Imagine that you have sort of the crazy uncle at the Thanksgiving dinner. Treat him pleasantly. Point out in a gentle way that he's totally out of touch with reality. Stick to the facts. And he'll have a great debate. Paul Ryan knows more facts than Joe Biden has misrepresented.
Okay. I want to go back to the videotape here of the debate last night. This was about companies moving offshore. The president suggested that when you move a company offshore, you get a tax cut. Here's the exchange.
When it comes to corporate taxes, Governor Romney has said he wants to, in a revenue-neutral way, close loopholes, deductions. He hasn't identified which ones they are, but thereby bring down the corporate rate. Well, I want to do the same thing, but I've actually identified how we can do that. And part of the way to do it is to not give tax breaks to companies that are shipping jobs overseas. Right now, you can actually take a deduction for moving a plant overseas.
You said you get a deduction for taking a plant overseas? Look, I've been in business for 25 years. I have no idea what you're talking about. I maybe need to get a new accountant. But the idea that you get a break for shipping jobs overseas is simply not the case. What we do have right now is a setting where I'd like to bring money from overseas back to this country.
What do you make of that exchange?
I watched it last night in mild amazement. First of all, I trust Romney's knowledge of business taxes because he's made a lot of money over the years being involved in businesses. If there was some major tax break, I am confident he would know it was there, or he wouldn't have made the claim. And I thought it was a nice way for him to re-emphasize his business experience, at the same time pointing out the president didn't know what he was talking about. And it was, to me, it was one of the more fascinating moments in the whole debate, because the president's out on a limb with the usual liberal attack, and here's a guy saying, "Wait a second, you're talking about how I earned a living. You're not talking about some theory here." And we never did that, and I don't think it exists in the tax code.
Both campaigns now, Newt, are so focused on the swing voters, the Catholic swing vote in particular, in Ohio, in Iowa, in Pennsylvania. Paul Ryan recently mounted this little video. I'm going to play just a bit of it, and then I want to go to Governor Romney's closing statement from last night. Tell me if you think this moves the needle with those swing voters, Catholic working-class swing voters in those states. Go.
In America, we consider religious liberty our first freedom. That's because there is no constitutional guarantee more precious than our right to the free exercise of religion. As Catholics, we see our faith as more than an individual right. We see it as a vital part of our community.
Does this help?
Well, I think given what Cardinal Dolan has described the Obama administration's war on religion, it is a remarkable contrast. It gives you a faithful Catholic who grew up in the local church, who understands this stuff very well, who gave a speech at Georgetown on Catholic social doctrine. I mean, Paul Ryan's a serious guy, and he's saying something which Callista and I have done movies and books about, that religious liberty is at the very heart of freedom. It's when we did our movie on John Paul II going to Poland, 9 Days That Changed the World, one of our major reasons for doing it is he so vividly communicated in a communist dictatorship the centrality of religious liberty to every other freedom. So I think in that sense that he's certainly, I hope he is striking a chord because it's central, I think, to a world of faith.
Listen to this closing statement by Governor Romney. It was the only time, really, that faith was mentioned in any context in this debate, but it was a debate about the economy. Listen.
The role of government. Look behind us, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. The role of government is to promote and protect the principles of those documents. First, life and liberty. We have a responsibility to protect the lives and liberties of our people. Second, in that line that says we are endowed by our Creator with our rights, I believe we must maintain our commitment to religious tolerance and freedom in this country. That statement also says that we are endowed by our Creator with the right to pursue happiness as we choose.
Effective?
Look, I'm deeply biased. We did both a book and a movie called Rediscovering God in America. I think that what Romney said is exactly right. I am proud that he said it. I think that in the last couple of years, partly because of the Obama administration, we have seen the question of whether or not our rights come from our Creator become central once again. The Tea Party movement has helped make it central. The war against the Catholic Church has helped make it central. And I think that it's a profound thing. And I'm delighted that Governor Romney thought it was central to how he closed the debate.
What does he have to do to close that gap among Catholics? That Pew study recently has him down, Governor Romney down by 9 to 13 points among Catholics overall.
Well, I mean, my advice is pretty straightforward. They've got to dramatically increase their presence in Spanish-speaking media, places like Univision, Telemundo. The fact is, I suspect most of that gap is among Hispanic Americans, and he simply has to reach out to them and keep. Now, I'm told that he is, in fact, closing the gap among Latinos, and I think that they're going to work very hard on that. But I think that's a key part of what they have to do.
Before we go to our next guest, whom you know very well, I want to talk for a moment about this report. Dale Hudson revealed, and it's been picked up by USA Today and other places, that there is a group calling itself Catholics for Obama. They've been making push phone calls in these swing states, and they say, how can you support a Mormon who does not believe in Jesus Christ? The phone banker making the call then asserts President Obama did not support abortion and that Planned Parenthood helps children get health care and prenatal care and does not promote abortion. Your reaction to this? Obviously, the Obama administration has distanced itself from this, saying we have no part of this, and religion has no place.
They should go out. They should condemn it, and they should encourage anybody who hears from them to file a complaint. I mean, this is the kind of vicious, dishonest, and divisive stuff. It's factually false. So everything you said there is factually false, and I think it is. Sadly, as the left starts to lose. Coming out of last night, you're going to see more and more desperation, whether it's on your telephone, in your emails, on television, you name it. The desperation is just going to skyrocket as they face defeat.
I want to talk to you for a moment about Jim Lehrer, who was the moderator last night. Was he the big loser of this debate?
Well, I think as a citizen, he was the big winner because he didn't do anything. I mean, I've always advocated get rid of the moderator, have a timekeeper, and let the two candidates talk. They came as close to that last night as they ever have.
This was your Lincoln Douglas-style debate last night.
They came as close as I've ever seen. And both, to be fair, both Governor Romney and President Obama both cheerfully told him back off. I think that's terrific. I mean, I don't think the moderator is the central figure when you're picking the president. I think the two candidates for president should be the central figures. And so I commend Lehrer for being remarkably ineffective, and I hope he has set the standard for future moderators.
Okay, we'll take that. Before I let you go, your advice to Governor Romney and your advice to the president going into this last lap and the two big debates to come.
Well, because I'm a very strong Romney partisan, my advice to the president is relax. It was a bad evening. You'll do great. Don't study. Just hang out. I watch more TV.
Go to dinner with Michelle.
Well, the World Series is coming up. Try to get to every game. I mean, that's my advice to the president.
Take it easy.
My advice to Romney is don't back off. Don't coast. Don't go on defense. Come in as prepared, as aggressive, as leaning forward, and the next two debates as you were last night, and you'll do just fine.
Now, this next debate is more town hall. He's not going to be able to control it the way he did these proceedings.
Sure you can.
But that's hard because you've got citizens coming at you with questions, isn't it?
And so you answer them, but you answer them on your terms. You say, I'm really glad you asked that question about Greenland, and that reminds me of this very important answer about Australia that I want to share with you because it's so important in understanding Greenland.
They need you as coach, Newt. That's what it is.
I think I think Rob Portman did a great job, and I think the Romney team should feel very good tonight that they had a great, great debate.
Okay, we'll leave it there for the moment. Up next, New York Times best-selling children's author and Newt's wife, Callista Gingrich, will join us. She'll talk about the importance of teaching kids about American history and her fixation with a certain elephant. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Don't miss it. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. Last year, the U.S. Department of Education released the National Assessment of Educational Progress, a sort of national report card. It revealed that kids in 4th, 8th, and 12th grade knew little of American history, forget world history. My next guest is trying to do something about this trend. She's writing stories for children centered on America's unique history, told through the eyes of an elephant. Her first Ellis the Elephant adventure was a New York Times bestseller. The latest installment, Land of the Pilgrim's Pride, is available now. Here to talk about it is the author, Callista Gingrich, and her husband, Speaker Newt Gingrich, remains with us. Great to see you, Callista.
Thanks for having us.
Let's talk about this book. First of all, where did Ellis come from? Which my daughter asked me last night. Daddy, where did Ellis come from?
Yes, well, I write these books because I love America, and I believe that we're a truly exceptional nation. And I think it's more important now than ever that our children realize how special we are. And to capture the interest and attention of young children, you need a unique character. And I considered many animals for this story, and I looked at bunnies and hippos and giraffes, but in the end, I couldn't resist this adorable little elephant.
Now, you all are both zoological fans. You all, you run to zoos pretty often. Is that where this sort of bubbled up from?
Well, Newt is a huge fan of zoos, and I go along cheerfully.
Oh, that is honesty.
That's a duck of the day if I ever heard one. Now, I want to point one other thing out that I had missed in reading both these books, but my daughter pointed out. In all the illustrations, there is a little eagle. Who's the sidekick eagle that appears in all these illustrations?
Absolutely right. That is our eagle. And the eagle is a symbol of our American freedom. And everywhere Ellis goes, the eagle goes as well.
Oh, so it's freedom stalking Ellis.
That's right.
I like that. Now, why did you write this Land of the Pilgrim's Pride now? What do we need to know about, particularly about the 13 colonies, which is the focus of this book?
I think it's vitally important that our children understand how our country began. And colonial America is a large part of our American history, and it's often we don't know about it, unfortunately. Our children aren't learning our American history, and a recent survey showed that a majority of fourth graders couldn't identify Jamestown as our first English settlement. Most fourth graders didn't know why the Pilgrims came from England, and fewer than a third of all eighth graders knew why the colonies fought England during the Revolutionary War. So we've got some work to do, and we really owe it to our kids to teach them what it means to be American.
Through the book, you point out sort of the unified character of these colonies, and there are traits that emerge that shape the American character.
That's right.
What are those traits, and are you trying to communicate those through the book?
Yes, absolutely. The traits that the colonists embodied are traits we like to see in people today, in our presidents and our leaders and society in general. They're traits of hard work, integrity, perseverance, and resourcefulness, traits that really shape this nation.
Yeah, and also leisure. We should point out he starts at Williamsburg in the back of a carriage, and then kind of makes his way back in history.
Absolutely.
Tell me, how did Newt contribute to this?
Well, Newt,
being the historian-in-chief in the household, I'm sure.
Newt loves Ellis the Elephant, and he has been very supportive of this project. And as a history teacher, he is just excited that we're going to continue to march Ellis the Elephant through the various chapters of our American history.
Wow, what's next?
Well, Ellis is very interested in the American Revolution.
Oh, okay. Okay, and I know someone has written extensively on the Civil War, the American Revolution. Were you surprised at how difficult it is to communicate this kind of information to children?
And anybody who's never tried to do this has no idea how hard it is. I've written a lot of books, fair number of novels, fair number of nonfiction. But to get rhymes that fit, that have a musical rhythm to them, that are easy to remember, that are accurate, that have words that 4 to 8 year olds understand. I mean, it is, I watched Callista first with Sweet Land of Liberty and then now with the Land of the Pilgrim's Pride. The intensity of you say a line that doesn't quite work, you play around with it, you say it again, you try for a different word. I mean, and then Susan Acero, who's the artist, she and Callista just formed this team that has, I think, been remarkable in their achievement.
What is the process, Callista? Did you write the book, did you write all the verse and then send it to her and she illustrated it, or did you all work together each step of the way?
Well, it is a team project, and we first think of the traits and the characteristics that we want to convey, and the stories that convey those traits. And then we look at the actual stories and the best illustrations that could convey the story. And so it's a partnership.
One of the things I found fascinating when I went through, because this is not kind of just, oh, and Ellis waved the flag and Ellis ate turkey with the Pilgrims.
Right.
It actually imparts various milestones, including the religious liberty history of America. There's a page where it talks about the Maryland Catholics settling. There's another page that talks about religious freedom in Rhode Island.
Right.
Why the emphasis why the religious liberty emphasis that really runs through the book?
That's right. It's so important because a large reason why most of the colonists came to America was to govern themselves and to worship freely. So we do have several examples of that in this book.
What surprised you as you all were working on this?
By the way, I want to make one comment that her mother made that I think is because this is about the colonies, and all too often American history starts with the Declaration of Independence. Yet it's the 170 years before that make us American, but we don't study very often. So her mother emailed her the other day and said, this is actually for people from 4 to 80. She said, I read this, I learned a whole lot of new things I didn't know, because Ellis does go to all 13 colonies, and you pick up things in there that you probably never had encountered before.
Right. I really see this book as a celebration of our patriotic values. It's not meant to be a conservative book or a Republican book. It's a pro-American book, and I really hope that many families will see this as a celebration of our values and of our nation.
What I love about it, and what the kids, my children, I read the first and this book too, these are places, it chronicles places that they've been, so there's a real tangible connection to the material. Did you all go to all the locales before you wrote those sections, or did you just Google away?
We did a little Googling and a little visiting, and there's a great resource section in the back of the book that will be helpful to parents and to teachers so kids can learn more about our country.
What's the takeaway here? What do you want children to come away with after reading the book?
I want them to realize how our nation began and how our brave colonists really started our country and developed the characteristics and traits and defined what it means to be American.
Do you see a through line here, Newt, and a connection between the books you all authored together, the Discovering God series, which is, if you haven't read it, it's a fascinating sort of tour of Washington and beyond, and how these monuments really reflect our religious heritage, and which is the basis, as you said earlier, of our freedom.
I think the whole notion of the American legacy, we're actually launching an American legacy tour.
Tell us about that.
Where we'll have Callista's children's books. We'll have my new novel about George Washington, Victory at Yorktown, which comes out in November, which is the third novel we've written about Washington. We've written 4 novels about the Civil War. We've written very serious nonfiction books on rediscovering God in America and A Nation Like No Other. We did a movie, City Upon a Hill, that really captures American exceptionalism. 9 Days That Changed the World, that captures religious liberty in Poland and Pope John Paul II and the end of the Soviet Empire. And we did Rediscovering God in America as a movie as well as a book. So there's a theme here of the centrality of religious liberty and the centrality of faith to defining America and to defining freedom. And I think it comes through all of our movies and our books, both for adults and for children. And it's something that we really both feel deeply at an emotional level. This to us is an integral part of patriotism as an American.
Ellis will go on then and have other adventures.
He will march through history.
Okay, so Revolutionary War, Civil War, straight on into the modern age.
Yes.
Love it. No Vietnam. My producer said Vietnam. We'll see. We'll see. Not part of American history. The Land of Pilgrim's Pride, Callista Gingrich's new book. You should get it, particularly for your children and families. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks, Raymond.
And we hope to see you again soon.
Always.
Now you can follow the Gingriches at GingrichProductions.com. I'm sure everything's there, including their upcoming tour, which you'll want to follow as well. Up next, confused about the morality of one public policy stance as opposed to another this election season? Well, now there's an app for that. Father John Trigilio is here to tell us more when The World Over Live continues. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. There's been a lot of talk about Catholics voting with a well-formed conscience this political season. But where do you go to get clear, concise instruction on the most important matters to consider before casting your vote? The answers may be as close as your iPhone. My next guest is the co-author of Catholicism for Dummies, as well as the longtime co-host of EWTN's Web of Faith. He's also the president of the Confraternity of Catholic Clergy. Here to give us a preview of the Confraternity's new free app is Father John Trigilio.
How you doing,
Welcome
Raymond?
to the
Thank
show.
you.
Delighted to have you here. Now let's talk for a moment. Why do Catholics need a voter's guide? Can't they figure this out on their own?
Well, they could figure it on their own if they got a good formation. Unfortunately, as you and I both well know, a lot of people during the 60s and 70s got butterflies and clouds instead of catechesis. And some of the Catholic colleges they went to were not Catholic. Mm-hmm. So their formed consciences either were not formed or ill-formed.
Mm. Well, but the felt manners looked really nice for so many years, Father. Let's not degrade that. Now, why an app? You all are releasing an app. This is coming out October 9th.
Yes.
Why did you decide to launch it as an app and not as a pamphlet or a hard voter's guide?
Well, because just as a pastor, and most of our members are pastors, priests and deacons in the parish, we know people don't read as much as they used to. Everything is on electronic media, and so everyone has an app or has a device that uses an app, whether it's the iPhone or the smartphone or Android. And we figured, why not use the technology that's there, like Pope Benedict said we should? And so we figured this would be a great avenue to hit, especially that group of Catholics who either are ill-formed or don't realize what they don't know.
Who is designing this app and why?
Well, it was designed by the Confraternity of Catholic Clergy, and I and a couple others of our board worked on it. And basically we used the bishop's letter on responsible citizenship, as well as Cardinal Ratzinger's 2004 letter on worthy reception of Holy Communion.
Now tell me, why those two resources? Why did you use those as guideposts?
Well, we used the bishop's letter because primarily it's coming from the American Bishops' Conference, and it spells out key issues that Catholics need to consider when they go into the voting booth. And Cardinal Ratzinger, well then Cardinal Ratzinger's letter in 2004 made it very explicit about what constitutes formal and material cooperation in evil, particularly as you're voting for candidates who support intrinsic evils like, say, abortion, assisted suicide, and euthanasia.
Now you highlight here 6 vital issues. Why those 6 issues?
Those 6 issues we think are so pertinent, and they are being impacted so much in this upcoming election, but also in the culture at large. So the first and foremost, the most foundational issue is the right to life, which is obviously being attacked by abortion, euthanasia, assisted suicide, but then religious liberty, particularly because of the HHS mandate, and also all the other restraints of government on church activity, what pastors can say from the pulpit, the sanctity of marriage. We have the right of private property, which a lot of people don't realize that's part of our Christian heritage, that you're allowed to have private property, but then you also have the access to necessary goods, that we must provide things for people to be able to obtain them, and then finally the issue of war itself and military engagement.
A number of bishops have been trying to distinguish of late between the so-called non-negotiables that Pope Benedict has staked out and prudential judgments. Does this app address that distinction and help people distinguish between the two?
Yes, we do. Without using the terminology of, we certainly refer to things as being non-negotiable, and we use the phrase prudential judgment because we make it very clear that these principles, for instance, the principle of right to life, is absolute. It cannot be watered down or diluted, and that's non-negotiable. But so is the right of religious liberty, so is the right to private property, so is the right to defend one's country or one's people, whether it's an attack by terrorists or a foreign aggressor.
And what do you want people to do with this? Obviously, they download it to their iPad or their iPhone, and then what?
We want them to use that to look at it frequently, particularly on election day. And what's nice about this is because they're general principles, it applies in every election, whether it's presidential, congressional, senatorial, gubernatorial. But also because of this upcoming election, there's so much at stake, not just with who holds the office, but what that person does with the office, because there will be some possible Supreme Court appointments made, and that's going to be affecting some of these issues as well.
Yeah, and the nice thing is these are concise
Very concise.
Entries. This doesn't go on for pages and pages.
No, it's because that's the way the apps work. We want it to be concise. People, we don't want to say they have a short attention span, but that's the nature of how these things operate. And people go from one thing to the other. So we purposely kept it short, but there's the clarity, there's the accuracy, and also the urgency.
Bishop Paprocki of Springfield, Illinois, came out this week, and he released a video as well as a pastoral letter for his diocese. He compared the party platforms of the two parties, Democratic and Republican, and made this statement. I want to get your reaction. Go ahead, roll that.
There are many positive and beneficial planks in the Democratic Party platform, but I am pointing out those that explicitly endorse intrinsic evils. I know that the Democratic Party's official, unequivocal support for abortion is deeply troubling to pro-life Democrats. I have read the Republican Party platform, and there is nothing in it that supports or promotes an intrinsic evil or a serious sin.
Your thoughts?
Well, personally, I think he's right on target. I think as a priest, we do have to be cautious that we don't appear partisan, but obviously when you're stating the facts, that's not being partisan.
Right, all he's saying is, look, I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm simply diagnosing the moral condition of this platform as opposed to this one.
He's connecting the dots which are out there. I think what happens is when people hear that, it makes them nervous because the truth can be unnerving. And when you point out the facts that, here's a party that says this, here's a party that says that, and you have to compare what is being said either in print or verbally by the candidates or their parties or their platforms against the natural moral law and the magisterial teachings.
I want to switch gears a little bit and move up to October 11th. That is the beginning of the year of faith. Now, there are an awful lot of Catholics out there who think, the important date is in November when they vote. Tell us why October 11th is so important, and what does Pope Benedict intend for this year of faith? Which is actually 13 months.
Yes, 13 months. I think what he wants us to do is to appreciate our faith. And first, the only way you can appreciate it is know what it is. So obviously, by reminding people this is the 50th anniversary of the Second Vatican Council, it's the 20th anniversary of the Catechism, he's encouraging people to, one, pray the profession of faith, and also to know what the content of faith is, which is essentially what's in the Catechism. And once you know the faith, then you could apply it, live it, practice it.
He says, quote, in his letter announcing this year of faith, it's a summons to an authentic and renewed conversion to the Lord. How do people incorporate that into their everyday lives? This is always the problem, it seems to me. Whether it's the Holy Year or this year of faith, how do people tangibly make use of it and do something in their lives to make it meaningful?
I think that to make it personal, they have to make a commitment. And rather to go overboard and try to do too much, as we tell people in the spiritual life, start out small. Start by reading the Bible readings, the scripture readings for that coming Sunday's Mass. Read the Catechism, a paragraph at a time. Read some good Catholic literature, like say Catholicism for Dummies or something.
That's right. There you go.
Watch EWTN. Go to the EWTN website. Read like the National Catholic Register. Be informed, but also to read some of the great classics too, like from St. Augustine, St. Francis de Sales, St. Teresa of the Little Flower. But to start out small and build up gradually. You don't have to go too far, because what happens is people, it's like in Lent. They want to do too much too soon, and then all of a sudden they poop out as halfway through Lent and they gave up everything that they were supposed to be giving up.
Right.
If it's moderately done, it's going to be consistent and it's going to be lasting.
So start small, but be consistent.
Exactly.
And Mother Angelica's Little Book of Life Lessons is a wonderful little. You can read that on the nightstand.
Yes, you can.
It's quick, and you can learn an enormous amount. Enrich your spiritual life. Synod for the new evangelization has kicked off. Why do we need a synod, and why are people, and when I say people, I mean the culture at large, paying so little attention to matters of faith and spirituality, to say nothing of Catholicism?
I think the problem is that they don't know what faith is. I mean, they know the idea of faith, that is belief, but they don't know the content of faith or the object of faith. And when he was Cardinal Ratzinger, he wrote extensively on what faith is really about. It's a relationship. It's knowing about God, but then listening to God, that communication of one's mind and heart. And so for the synod, where all the bishops are gathering with the Holy Father, or in the local diocese, or in the parish, or in the local home, transmitting the faith, the traditio of handing on what we believe. That's how that's how the church began, with the apostles handing it on.
But it's examples. I've always said it's examples of faith that draw people to it. It's not books. It's not book learning. No. I worry that we've conceptualized and made this so complicated that you don't see living examples of the faith. And if you don't see that, I think evangelization just falls apart.
You're right.
Yes?
That has to be a two-sided coin. And like Pope Benedict said, it's not either or. You don't have to choose between the two. It's both and. So read the content, but then practice the faith. The saints are the greatest example of people who have personified this. So reading the saints, but also making pilgrimages. We just had a pilgrimage of our Diocese of Harrisburg to the National Shrine in Washington, D.C. It was a great spiritual event. And there's many places people can go to, like Mother Angelica's Shrine in Hanceville. That's an enterprise, because as you're going on pilgrimage, you're reminded that life is a pilgrimage, that we're hopefully going in the right direction and getting to the right destination.
Very good. Father John Trigilio, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Raymond.
The Catholic Voting Guide app from the Confraternity of Catholic Clergy will be released October 9th. It is free on iTunes, and you can find more information on it by visiting the Confraternity's website at CatholicClergy.net. CatholicClergy.net. That's all the time we have. The show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Go to RaymondArroyo.com. The Twitter and Facebook pages are linked on the left-hand side of my site. Like me on Facebook or follow me on Twitter at Raymond Arroyo. You missed all kind of fun commentary if you're not already doing that, so join us there. And just to remind you, the World Over Live re-air schedule has changed slightly. For more information, you can also go to my website or EWTN.com. Go to the World Over page. Until next week, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, I'm Raymond Arroyo. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye now.